The morning should have greeted me with the familiar scent of pine and the gentle whisper of the lake breeze, the kind that made my cabin feel like a slice of paradise. Instead, a putrid, eye-watering stench hit me like a punch, something rotten, and vile enough to churn my stomach. I stepped onto my deck and froze greenish-brown sludge was seeping from the electrical outlet, oozing like some toxic molasses onto the weathered planks. My gaze followed a thin cable snaking from the mess, stretching across the grass to the porch next door, where Karen, our self-crowned HOA queen, was blissfully charging her electric scooter. There she stood, sipping iced tea, waving at neighbors, with a smug grin, as if she ruled the lake. She had no idea her daily power theft was wired straight to my septic tank's pump, building pressure until the tank erupted like a foul volcano. My pulse raced. This was the moment chaos broke loose. Karen, humming a cheerful tune, started strolling toward my deck, completely unaware of the sewage stream slinking her way. Each step brought her closer to the nightmare. I held my breath, heart pounding, waiting for the inevitable. Then it happened. Her pristine white sneakers squelched into the sludge. She stopped dead, looked down, and let out a scream so shrill it sent birds fleeing from the trees. Her face twisted in a glorious mix of shock, disgust, and utter bewilderment, but this was just the opening act. How did our HOA's self-appointed guardian, the woman who patrolled our lake community like a hawk, end up ankle-deep in her own disaster, and why on earth was my outlet tied to the septic system? Which city in the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you've had any run-ins with an HOA. We'd love to narrate your story on our channel. I tell you, let me ask, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments because this story is about to get wild. My name is Jake. I'm 42, a construction worker who loves fishing and peace. I bought this lake cabin 5 years ago to escape the noise of city life. My neighbors, most are nice folks who mind their business. But then there's Karen. Karen is in her mid-50s with short blonde hair that never moves out of place. She wears oversized sunglasses even when it's cloudy and talks like every rule was written by her. She runs the HOA like it's her personal kingdom. Everyone fears her because she finds people for the smallest things. Paint colors, grass height, even how loud their dogs bark. She has a husband named Tom, a quiet guy who always looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Then there's their spoiled little dog, Muffin, who barks at anything that breathes. When I moved in, Karen welcomed me with a fake smile and a list of community rules. She told me around here, we share and respect each other's property. But over time, I realized she didn't live by those words. It started small. She'd borrow tools from my shed without asking. Then she'd take firewood from my pile because it was an emergency. But the worst came when she started using my outdoor outlet to charge her scooter. At first, I thought maybe she just plugged in once or twice, but no. Every single day, she sneaked over when I wasn't home. I caught her on my security camera smiling like she owned the place. I tried talking to her. I said, "Ma, Karen, please, stop using my outlet." She laughed and said, "Oh, Jake, it's just a little electricity. Don't be so dramatic." That's when I decided to make a small but powerful change. My cabin runs on a special setup where the septic tank's pump has its own line. I had an electrician friend rewire the outlet she loved so much. Now, whenever someone used it, it activated the pump in the worst way possible. For weeks, she kept plugging in, not knowing she was slowly building up a ticking time bomb under her feet. And then today, boom, the pump overflowed. The sludge crept up, the smell announced itself like a warning siren, and now Karen was screaming at the top of her lungs while standing in the mess. As she yelled for Tom to come help, I stepped onto my porch with my coffee. I said nothing. I just watched. Her eyes met mine and she shouted, "What did you do?" I stayed calm. "Karen," I said slowly, "you might want to step back." But it was too late. The pump kicked on again, spraying a fountain of sewage right next to her legs. She slipped, her iced tea flew through the air, and down she went, flat, on her back in the middle of it all. Neighbors gasped from their porches. Some even covered their noses. Karen scrambled to her feet, screaming words I can't repeat here, pointing her finger at me like she was about to explode. And that's when I saw the flashing lights of a car pulling into the driveway. A sheriff's deputy. Karen froze. Everyone froze. The deputy stepped out, looking confused at the smell in the scene. He walked straight toward me and asked, "Sir, what exactly is going on here?" Before I could answer, Karen screamed, "He attacked me. He's crazy. He set me up." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "Set you up with a septic tank?" I opened my mouth to explain, but that's when the deputy's radio crackled with another call. He looked back at me and said, "We'll finish this later." Then he turned to Karen, who was dripping with sewage, and said, "Ma'am, you might want to clean yourself up." As the deputy left, Karen glared at me like this wasn't over. And she was right, because later that night, I heard something outside my cabin, footsteps, whispering, the sound of something metallic scraping against my deck. When I looked out my window, I saw a shadow moving near my outlet. My heart stopped. Was she back for revenge? Or was someone else messing with my cabin? Before I could grab my flashlight, there was a loud bang. The deck shook and everything went dark. The entire cabin went black. No lights, no hum of the refrigerator, no glow from the security cameras, just darkness and the faint smell of sewage still hanging in the night air. My heart raced as I grabbed the flashlight by my bed. When I turned it on and aimed it at the deck, the beam caught a quick movement, someone running into the trees. I bolted out the door, barefoot and still half in shock. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing across the lake. Only the crickets answered back. The shadow was gone, swallowed by the woods. But something wasn't right. The outlet box was ripped open, wires hanging like torn veins. I crouched down to inspect the damage. The wires had been cut clean, not chewed or frayed. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. My gut told me it was Karen. Who else would sneak onto my property at night after what happened earlier? Still, I couldn't prove it. The next morning, I walked outside to see a bright red HOA notice taped to my door. It read in bold letters, "A now arised electrical setup. Remove immediately or face fines." I laughed out loud. The nerve of this woman. She destroyed my outlet, then tried to fine me for it. This was war. Before I could even take the notice down, my phone buzzed. It was my friend Mark calling. Mark is the electrician who had helped me with the outlet setup. I told him what happened. "Jake, you need to be careful," Mark warned. "If she's messing with live wires, she could burn your whole cabin down or worse, frame you for something." His words stuck with me. Karen wasn't just a nosy HOA president. She was the type to escalate things. I needed to stay one step ahead. That afternoon, I decided to pay Karen a visit. I walked over to her house where she was sitting on her porch with her dog Muffin, acting like nothing had happened. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice calm, "did you cut my wires last night?" She gave me a fake innocent smile. "Oh, Jake, I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe your little experiment broke itself. You mean the outlet you've been stealing? Power from..." I shot back. Her face twitched, but she kept smiling. "Stealing? Oh, please. The HOA rules clearly say we can share resources in emergencies." "There was no emergency," I said flatly. Karen stood up, pointing her finger at me. "You better fix that outlet before the HOA fines you. And don't try any of your little tricks again. Jake, I'll be watching you." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were pure venom. I walked back to my cabin, fists clenched. I knew I couldn't let her win. That night, I called Mark again and asked him to help me install a new setup. One that would not only work, but also catch her in the act if she tried anything. We planned to set up a small hidden camera right near the outlet, disguised in a birdhouse. By the time we were done, it was almost midnight. The outlet looked perfectly normal, but it was now connected to a low voltage alarm that would trigger if someone tampered with it. I went to bed feeling prepared. The next few days were quiet, almost a quiet. Karen stayed out of sight and there were no more notices on my door. I started to think maybe she had backed off, but peace doesn't last long in this neighborhood. 3 days later, I was out fishing on the lake when I heard loud shouting from the direction of my cabin. I rowed back as fast as I could, and what I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. Karen was in my yard again, but this time she wasn't alone. She had brought to HOA board members with her, and they were all staring at my cabin like it was a crime scene. "What's going on?" I yelled as I came up the dock. Karen spun around with her hands on her hips. "We've received multiple complaints about hazardous wiring on your property. We're here to inspect it." I laughed. "Hazardous? You mean the wiring you cut?" One of the board members, an older man named Fred, stepped forward. "Jake, if there's something unsafe here, we have to take action." Before I could respond, the low voltage alarm from the birdhouse suddenly went off loud and sharp. Karen jumped, looking around wildly. The alarm was triggered because someone was messing with the outlet right at that moment. I turned just in time to see Muffin, her little dog, tugging on a wire that Karen had clearly tried to inspect herself. The alarm scared the dog, and he bolted straight into the septic drain area, yelping as he slipped. Karen screamed, chasing after him, but it was too late. The pump system activated with a loud whir, and a burst of foul-smelling water sprayed up, drenching her from head to toe. The board members covered their noses, backing away in shock. Karen stood frozen, soaked in sewage, clutching her dog. Turn it off, she shrieked. I crossed my arms. "Funny, Karen, that only happens when someone tampers with my property." Fred looked at me, then at Karen. "This doesn't look like Jake's fault." Karen's face turned red with rage and embarrassment. She stormed off with Muffin, leaving a trail of stink behind her. But as she left, she shouted over her shoulder, "This isn't over. Jake, you'll regret this." The board members left soon after, muttering to each other. I thought maybe this would finally be the end of it. But that night, just when I was about to relax, I heard the sound of an engine outside. I peeked through the blinds. A black SUV I didn't recognize had pulled up to Karen's house. Two men got out dressed in suits and walked inside without knocking. Something about them felt off. Were they lawyers, inspectors, or something worse? I stayed up late watching the house from my porch. Hours passed. Then around 2 a.m., the SUV pulled out. But instead of leaving, it stopped right in front of my cabin. The men rolled down the window, looked straight at me, and one of them said, "You're making things hard, Jake. Maybe it's time you stopped." Before I could say anything, they drove off into the night, leaving me with a chill running down my spine. What had Karen gotten herself and me into? The next morning, I found something on my doorstep. A dead fish nailed to a piece of wood with a note that said, "Leave or else." The sight of that dead fish stopped me cold. The smell was terrible, but the message was worse. My first thought was Karen wouldn't go this far, would she? Then again, after seeing those men in suits last night, nothing seemed impossible. I picked up the note with gloved hands and read it again. Leave or else. Simple, direct, a threat. My cabin was supposed to be my escape from drama, but now it felt like I was living inside a bad crime movie. I called the sheriff to report what happened. When Deputy Collins arrived, he squinted at the note and the fish. "You sure this is about the HOA stuff?" he asked. "What else would it be about?" I replied. Collins sighed. "Look, Jake, HOA disputes can get ugly, but this is something else. I'll file a report, but unless we catch them in the act, there's not much we can do." Not much we can do. Those words echoed in my head long after he left. The rest of the day was quiet, almost a quiet. Karen, didn't come outside, and no cars came to her house. I used the time to repair the outlet area again and double-check my security cameras. This time I upgraded them with night vision and motion alerts. While working, I kept thinking back to the day I bought this cabin. I had fallen in love with the lake, the way it shimmered at sunset, the way the woods felt alive. This was supposed to be my sanctuary. I wasn't about to let Karen and her threats drive me away. That night, I grilled some fish on the deck trying to relax. The moon was bright and the air was calm. For a few hours, I almost forgot about the threats, but peace never lasts long around here. Around midnight, the motion alert on my phone buzzed. My heart jumped as I checked the feed. The camera showed a figure creeping near the outlet again. The birdhouse camera zoomed in automatically, and I saw it wasn't Karen this time. It was one of the men in suits. He was crouched down, cutting at the wires with a pair of pliers. Suddenly, he froze and looked straight at the camera as if he knew it was there. He smirked, then cut the feed with one swift move. The screen went black. Before I could react, the alarm outside went off, loud, shrill, and echoing across the lake. I grabbed my flashlight and ran out. The man was gone just like that, vanished into the trees. But something was wrong. The pump was running. I heard the gurgling from the septic system louder than ever before. Then came the explosion. A massive burst of sewage shot up from the tank, spraying the yard like a geyser. The stench was unbearable. It covered everything: the deck, the trees, the side of the cabin. I stumbled back, gagging. Whoever that man was, he had done something to the system to make it blow. As I tried to shut it down, I saw a light flicker. On across the lake, it was Karen's house. She was standing on her porch, watching, her arms crossed. Even from that distance, I could see the smirk on her face. I yelled, "You think this is funny?" She didn't answer. She just turned and went back inside, leaving me in the mess. I spent the rest of the night cleaning what I could and praying no more surprises were coming. By morning, I was exhausted. I sat on the porch drinking coffee when Fred, the older HOA board member, walked up. "Jake," he said, looking worried. "I need to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" He glanced around nervously. "Karen, she's not just the HOA president. She's tied up with some shady people. Those men you saw, they're not lawyers, they're debt collectors. She owes a lot of money and they think you're in the way of them getting paid." My stomach dropped. "In the way? How?" Fred lowered his voice. "They think your cabin is the key. Karen told them she's going to get control of this property somehow. She promised them a cut." I was stunned. This wasn't just a neighborly feud anymore. This was dangerous. Before I could respond, a loud crash came from the direction of my shed. We both ran over to see flames rising. My shed was on fire. Fred shouted, "Call 911. I grabbed the hose and tried to fight the fire, but it was spreading fast. By the time the fire truck arrived, half the shed was gone. When the flames were finally out, the firefighters confirmed what I already suspected. It was arson. Someone had poured gasoline around the base. Fred looked at me with fear in his eyes. "Jake, this is just the beginning. You need to be careful." As the firefighters packed up, one of them handed me something they found in the ashes, a charred piece of wood with another message carved into it. "Next time it's the cabin." I stood there shaking with anger and fear. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, I decided enough was enough. I loaded my shotgun, locked every door, and sat by the window, waiting. At 3 a.m., the motion camera pinged again. This time, it wasn't a shadow. It was Karen herself, sneaking across my yard with a flashlight in one hand and something shiny in the other. She crept toward the septic pump, muttering under her breath. I opened the door quietly, aiming the flashlight right at her, looking for something. "Karen," I said. She froze like a deer in headlights, then bolted toward the trees. I ran after her, but halfway through the chase, she slipped on the wet ground and fell hard. The shiny object flew from her hand. It was a crowbar. I grabbed it before she could. Care to explain this? I growled. Karen's face twisted with fury. You don't know what you're dealing with, Jake. They'll kill you. They'll kill both of us if I don't deliver. I was about to ask her who they were when a pair of headlights appeared out of nowhere, blinding us both. The black SUV roared to a stop. 2 men jumped out. Karen screamed, "Run!" But before either of us could move, one of the men pulled out a gun, and that's when everything went to chaos. The first shot shattered the silence of the night, whizzing past my head and hitting a tree behind me. Karen screamed, scrambling to her feet while I dove behind a rock. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear anything else. The smell of burnt gunpowder mixed with the lingering sewage stench in the air. The 2 men advanced slowly, their boots crunching on the gravel. One held a pistol, the other a baseball bat. The SUV's headlights threw long, eerie shadows across the yard. Hand over the keys to the cabin, the man with the gun barked. Now, Karen was on her knees crying, "Please don't hurt us. I'll get you what you want." I clenched my fists around the crowbar I'd taken from her. My mind raced. If I gave them what they wanted, they might still kill us both. If I fought back, it could end even worse, but then my security alarm, loud and piercing, went off. It startled the men just long enough for me to grab Karen's arm and yank her toward the cabin. "Move," I shouted. We ran as bullets tore through the air, hitting the wooden deck behind us. We slammed the door shut and locked it. I grabbed my shotgun from the corner, loaded it, and aimed at the door. Karen collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. "They won't stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They want this cabin because of the land. They think it's worth millions. With the new resort coming in," I glared at her, "and you promised it to them." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I told them I could force you out. That's why I started all this." Rage burned through me. All those months of harassment, the threats, the sabotage, it was her doing to save her own skin. Outside, the men banged on the door, shouting, "Open up, Jake. Don't make this harder." Karen crawled to the window, peeking out. "They won't leave," she whispered. I took a deep breath, trying to think. Then I remembered the septic pump. The system was still unstable from their earlier sabotage. If I could trigger it at the right time, maybe I could scare them off or trap them. "Karen," I said, "do you want to live through this?" She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes and nodded. "Then do exactly what I say." While the men circled the cabin, I snuck to the breaker box and rerouted power to the pump system. The ground outside was still slick with sewage. One false step and it would be chaos out there. I opened the side window, just enough to aim my shotgun. "Hey," I yelled. The men turned toward me. "You want this cabin? Come and take it?" The one with the gun raised his weapon, but before he could fire, I shot into the ground near the septic tank. The blast hit the weakened pipe, and with a deafening roar, the entire system erupted, shooting a geyser of sewage so high it sprayed everything within 20 feet. The men screamed as the foul sludge rained down on them. They slipped, fell, and scrambled to get up, their suits ruined. The SUV's headlights caught the scene perfectly. 2 thugs covered in filth, slipping and cursing. Karen, still on the floor, covered her mouth in shock. The men stumbled to their SUV, gagging and swearing, and sped off into the night. For a few minutes, silence returned. My hands shook as I closed the window and set the shotgun down. Karen slowly stood, her face pale. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "You've humiliated them." I locked eyes with her. "Good. Let them come back. I'll be ready." But deep inside, I knew she was right. This wasn't over. At dawn, I walked the yard, checking the damage. The septic pump was destroyed, wires scattered everywhere. The smell unbearable, my deck was coated in sludge. As I cleaned, I noticed something glinting in the grass. It was a phone. One of the men must have dropped it during the chaos. I picked it up, wiping off the grime, and turned it on. The screen lit up with a message notification. It read, "Meet at the pier at midnight. Bring the deed or we burn it down." My stomach nodded. They weren't bluffing. I turned to Karen, who was sitting on the steps, hugging her knees. "You're coming with me," I said. She looked up startled. "Why?" "Because you started this and you're going to help me finish it." That night, as the sun dipped behind the trees, we waited. The lake was calm, the sky clear, but the air buzzed with tension. I hid the phone in my pocket and kept my shotgun close. When midnight came, we walked to the pier together. The water reflected the moonlight, making the scene almost peaceful. But then we heard it, the sound of the SUV's engine approaching. The black vehicle stopped at the edge of the pier, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The men stepped out, still wearing their filthy, stained suits. One of them sneered, "You brought the deed." I stepped forward slowly, gripping the phone. "You drop this," I said, holding it up. Their eyes narrowed. "Where's the deed?" I smirked. "You'll have to come and get it." Behind me, Karen was shaking, but she stood her ground. The men advanced, and that's when I hit the remote in my pocket. A loud click echoed, followed by the sudden sound of ropes snapping. The old pier beneath their feet gave way, collapsing into the lake. Karen looked out the window, her face pale. Oh no, they brought more men. I watched as at least 6 figures got out, armed with crowbars, bats, and flashlights. They spread out, circling the cabin like predators. One of them shouted, "Jake, come out, and maybe we'll let you live." I swallowed hard. The odds were bad, but something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let these men take what was mine. I grabbed my shotgun, checked the shells, and took position by the window. Karen clutched a kitchen knife, trembling, but determined to stand by me. The men advanced, smashing my outdoor lights one by one. Darkness swallowed the yard. Then they started beating on the door. Bang, bang, bang. "Open up, Jake, or we burn it down." Flames flickered outside. They were pouring gasoline around the base of the cabin. My heart raced. "Karen, go to the back room and stay low," I ordered. She didn't argue. I waited until the first man kicked the door open. The moment he stepped inside, I fired into the ceiling, loud enough to scare them but not kill. The blast echoed and they stumbled back, shouting. Then the alarms I'd rigged went off, all of them at once. Blinding strobe lights flashed, piercing the darkness. Sirens wailed. The men yelled, disoriented. While they scrambled, I triggered the backup septic pump. A crude but effective trap. The ground outside turned into a slick, foul swamp. 2 of them slipped, crashing hard. The smell was overwhelming. But amid the chaos, one managed to light a Molotov cocktail. My eyes widened as he hurled it toward the deck. The bottle shattered and flames erupted, licking up the wooden planks. Karen screamed. I grabbed a fire extinguisher and fought the flames, but the fire spread faster than I expected. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Through the haze, I saw the men retreating to their vehicles, shouting curses. They sped off into the night, leaving the cabin partially on fire. I managed to put out the flames, coughing and drenched in sweat. Half the deck was gone, but the cabin still stood barely. Karen collapsed on the floor, sobbing. They'll come back. They won't stop until one of us is dead. I looked at the charred remains of my deck, rage boiling inside me. Then it's time to take this to them. She looked at me in shock. What do you mean? I stood, loading my shotgun. If they want a war, they've got one. But this time, I'm not waiting for them to strike first. Karen wiped her tears, her voice shaking. Jake, if you go after them, you'll be walking into their trap. I stared out at the dark lake, my jaw set. No, I'll make them walk into mine. The next evening, I set my plan into motion. I used the phone they dropped to send a message. Midnight, abandoned boat house. Come alone if you want the deed. I placed cameras around the area, rigged the entrance with tripwires, and waited in the shadows with Karen by my side. At midnight, their SUV appeared, followed by another. More men than before. The leader stepped out, smiling coldly. Finally, decided to play ball, Jake. I didn't answer. I waited. They advanced toward the boathouse. That's when I triggered the first strap. The floorboards gave way, sending two men crashing into the freezing water below. They screamed, struggling to climb out as the rest scrambled back. Panic spread among them. But then the leader pulled out his gun, aiming straight at me. "And of the line, Jake," he said. Before he could shoot, a blinding spotlight hit the scene. Sirens wailed. Police cars roared up surrounding the boathouse. Deputy Collins stepped out, gun drawn. "Drop your weapons now." The men froze, caught completely off guard. One by one, they dropped their guns. The leader growled, glaring at me. "This isn't over." Collins smirked. "Oh, it's over for tonight." As they were handcuffed and hauled away, Karen collapsed with relief. I finally exhaled, feeling like a mountain had been lifted off my chest. But, as the police drove away with the criminals, Collins gave me a grim look. "They'll be out soon, Jake. Men like that always find a way. Be ready." I nodded, gripping the shotgun tighter. I knew he was right. And later, that night, while the lake lay still, a single boat drifted silently across the water. Through the window, I saw a figure on it watching my cabin. They didn't move, they just sat there staring. Karen whispered, trembling, "Who is that?" I didn't answer, because I already knew this was far from over. The boat lingered like a shadow on the water, barely moving, just rocking gently under the moonlight. Whoever sat inside wasn't making a sound, they were just watching. I gripped my shotgun so tight my knuckles turned white. Karen clutched my arm, whispering, "Jake, this is getting worse. They won't stop. They'll keep coming." I didn't answer. My eyes stayed fixed on the boat. Minutes crawled by like hours. Then, as silently as it had come, the boat turned and drifted back into the darkness, swallowed by the mist on the lake. That night, neither of us slept. I stayed by the window, listening to every creak of the cabin, every ripple of the water. By morning, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. When the sun finally rose, I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to spend my life waiting for the next attack. I needed to find out who was really behind this, who those men worked for. Karen hesitated when I told her, "Jake, if you go digging, they'll know. They'll come harder." "Good," I said, flatly. "Let them know I'm not afraid." After a quick breakfast, I drove to the sheriff's station to speak with Deputy Collins. He looked up when I walked in, his expression serious. "Jake," he said, "I was just about to call you. The men we arrested last night, they're not talking. No IDs, no fingerprints on record. Whoever's pulling the strings is keeping them clean." I leaned on the counter. "There has to be something. Anything that ties them back to Karen's debt." "Colin, the only link we have is the bank she borrowed from, a shady offshore lender. They're known for using muscle to collect." I left the station with a plan forming in my head. If I could expose this lender, prove they were behind everything, maybe the law could finally protect us. Back at the cabin, I told Karen we were going to dig into her loan records. She looked terrified, but agreed. Together, we searched through her files, emails, and old letters. Hours passed. Then, we found it. An email thread with the lender's representative, a man named Victor. His last message was clear. "Deliver the lake property by the end of the month or face the consequences." The end of the month was only a few days away. That evening, I sent Victor an email from Karen's account. "The property is ready. Meet tomorrow at noon at the old fishing dock." Karen gasped when she saw what I did. "Jake, that's suicide." "No," I said, loading shells into my shotgun. "That's bait." The next day, we arrived early and hid cameras around the dock. I sat with my shotgun across my lap waiting. At noon, sharp, A sleek black boat approached. On it stood Victor, a tall man in a sharp suit with cold eyes that made my skin crawl. He stepped onto the dock like he owned it. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said. "Spotting Karen, I was expecting you alone." I stepped forward. Change of plans. Victor's eyes narrowed. "And you are the guy who's not giving up his cabin," I said. He smirked, brave but stupid. With a snap of his fingers, 2 more boats emerged from the mist, each carrying armed men. They stepped onto the dock surrounding us. Karen's knees buckled. "Jake," I cut her off. "Stay behind me." Victor stepped closer. "Last chance. Hand over the deed." Instead of answering, I hit the remote in my pocket. Hidden cameras flashed, capturing every second. "Smile," I said. "You're on live feed to the sheriff's office." Victor's smirk vanished. "You think that'll save you?" He lunged, but before he could reach me, sirens wailed. Patrol boats appeared. From the other side of the lake, Deputy Collins had seen the feed and come in fast. Victor's men panicked, firing shots into the air, but they were outnumbered. The patrol boats closed in, officers yelling commands. One by one, the thugs dropped their weapons. Victor glared at me as they handcuffed him. "You'll regret this, Jake. You just made enemies that don't forget." Collins grabbed him by the arm. "You're done, Victor," as they hauled him away. Karen collapsed to her knees, crying with relief. I helped her up, my chest tight. "It's over," but Collins shook his head. "No, Jake, this was just one branch. There's a whole tree behind him. Be ready." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. The lake was quiet, the air fresh. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd finally get peace, but peace never lasts long. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of footsteps on my porch. My heart leapt. I grabbed the shotgun and crept to the door. When I flung it open, there was no one there, just a small box sitting on the steps. I picked it up cautiously. Inside was a single bullet and a note. "Next time we won't miss." Karen screamed when she saw it. My blood ran cold. I knew the storm wasn't over, and the next evening, as the sun set, I saw smoke rising in the distance. Thick black smoke. Karen gasped. "Jake, that's the HOA office." The entire building was on fire. The flames lit up the night sky like a warning flare. Karen clutched my arm, trembling. "Jake, they're sending a message. They're burning everything down, one piece at a time." We jumped into my truck and sped toward the HOA office. By the time we arrived, the small building was engulfed, the fire roaring, devouring wood and papers like they were nothing. Neighbors stood at a distance, their faces pale in the glow. Firefighters were battling the blaze, but it was clear. The office was gone. Deputy Collins was already there, shouting orders. When he saw me, he walked over, his face grim. "Arson. No doubt about it. Whoever's behind this, they're tying up loose ends, burning records, covering tracks." Karen covered her mouth. "The loan documents, they were kept there." Collins nodded. "And now they're ashes." The air was thick with smoke and fear. Watching the building collapse into embers, I felt a cold rage take over me. "This ends tonight," I muttered. Karen's eyes widened. "Jake, no, they'll kill you." I turned to her. "If I don't stop this, they'll kill us. I'm done waiting for them to make the next move." I drove back to the cabin, my hands gripping the wheel so tight it hurt. The plan was already forming in my head. The lake would be my weapon, the cabin would be my fortress, and the septic system, the very thing they mocked, would be my trap. All night I worked. I rerouted pipes, set up motion sensors, and rigged alarms that would trigger bright floodlights. I even installed a failsafe, one switch to overload the pump and flood the yard in a wave of sewage no one could stand in. By dawn, I was ready. Karen sat on the porch looking hollow. "Do you think they'll come?" "They'll come," I said. "And this time, we finish it." The day crawled by. Each hour felt like an eternity. Then, as the sun dipped below the trees, I heard it, the low hum of boat engines. My chest tightened. For boats this time, gliding silently across the water like sharks. Men in dark clothes stepped onto the dock, armed and ready. At their center was Victor, somehow free, his face twisted with rage. "You should have left while you had the chance, Jake," he called out. "Now we'll take the cabin and leave you in pieces." I stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand. "Come and try." They advanced cautiously, spreading out, weapons raised. The motion sensors triggered and the floodlights exploded to life, blinding them. They fired wildly, bullets tearing into the wooden walls, but I stayed low, calm, waiting for them to step into the kill zone. One of them reached the pump system. "What's this?" he shouted. I smirked. Surprise. I flipped the switch. The pump roared to life, and within seconds, a geyser of sewage erupted, spraying high and wide, covering the men in a torrent of foul sludge. They gagged, slipping, their guns falling into the muck. The stench was unbearable. They staggered, blinded, trying to retreat, but the slippery ground betrayed them. They fell, crawled, choked. Victor screamed, "You'll pay for this." He aimed his pistol, but I fired first, hitting the ground near him. He dropped the gun, hands shaking. Then, floodlights from across the lake lit up the scene. Police boats were closing in. Colin's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Drop your weapons. You're surrounded." Victor and his men froze. They were trapped, covered in sewage, humiliated. One by one, they were handcuffed and dragged away. As Victor was shoved into the boat, he spat at me. "You think you've won. There's always someone bigger. You can't stop us all." I stared back coldly. "Maybe not, but I stopped you." The police boats disappeared into the night, carrying the criminals away. The yard was a disaster, the stench unbearable, but the air felt lighter. Karen sat down on the porch steps, tears streaming down her face. "Jake, it's over." I looked at the lake, calm once more, for now. We sat there in silence as the first rays of dawn broke over the water. The nightmare was finally ending. Karen turned to me, her voice soft. "Thank you. You saved my life, even after everything I did to you." I gave a tired smile. "Maybe now you'll understand what it means to be a good neighbor." She nodded, her eyes full of regret. As the sun rose higher, the lake sparkled like nothing had ever happened. The cabin stood battered but unbroken. So was I, and though I knew life would never be the same, one thing was clear. No matter how dark things got, I would always protect what was mine, because in the end, the lake always remembers who owns it.